Is this too loud? It feels so loud. Can we drop the volume a little? Shri Sri Radha Radhanath ki, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki, Gaura Premanande. Hare Krishna. So this morning, being the holy disappearance day of Srila Gadadhar Pandit and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we will commence the morning's class with singing the Song of Separation, Swaparshada Bhagavad Viraha Janita Vilapa by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. I'll just read the translation first, then we'll sing the song, and thereafter we'll discuss about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Translation. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality? Srinivasacharya gone. Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So this is a very deep song, a very deep emotional presentation of Narottam Das Thakur, as you can ascertain from the translation of the song. And at least for me, I can say, to me it seems so theoretic, having this type of emotional condition at the disappearance of great personalities who are so dear to Krishna, to Lord Chaitanya. So whenever I sing this, my my general prayer is that to someday get a sense of what it means to feel deep separation from the great saintly devotees and the Lord himself. Okay. Yayanilo premadhana karuna prachu premadhana karuna prachu Yayanilo premadhana karuna prachu. Hino Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur. Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakur. Kaha mora Swarup Rupa, Kaha Sanatan. Kaha dasa raghunata patita pavan. Kaha Mora Bhatta Juga Kaha Kaviraj. Eka kale kota gela Gauranataraj. Pashane kuti bomata Anale pashibo. Pashane kutibo mata Anale pashibo. Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kota Gele Pabo. Nidhi Kota Gele Pabo. Se Saba Sangira Sange Jai Koilo Vilash. Se Sangana Paya Kande Narotam Madha. Ye anilo prema dhana karuna prachur. Hena Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur. Hena Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur. Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astottara Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON's founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki. Mayapur Navadvip Dhama Ki. Ganga Mai Ki. Yamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulsi Maharani Ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki. Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur Tirabhav Mahamatsava Ki. Gaur Premanande All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, we will read and discuss some highlights of the life and teachings and activities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and who is of course the spiritual master of our Srila Prabhupada. But in his own right, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a giant in the history, a colossal person in the history of establishing the preaching of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Srila Prabhupada writes about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in just one line. I mean, he says many things which we'll read, but especially this one line is very pertinent. He says that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the pioneer of the program for benedicting the entire world with Krishna consciousness by the instructions of Lord Chaitanya. So the whole, of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had the vision, Prativiti Achayatana Garadigram, Sarvatra Prachar Hoibe More Nam, that he declared, as recorded in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, that in every town and village on this planet, his holy name will be sung. So in other words, Krishna consciousness will reach everywhere. And for many hundreds of years, few hundreds of years since the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, no one had an idea of how that would actually be done. Some people thought it was just some poetic language meant to embellish the experience and the power of Lord Chaitanya in his divinity. But most people just thought, well, that's just what it was, some poetry, and it actually couldn't be done. Even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had that drive. He wanted it. He had this mood. But even his disciples, most of them for that matter, couldn't conceive of how it could be done. Couldn't conceive. Some people even had the mood that it really meant the whole of India. You do get some nationalists who feel their country is everything. Many years ago, I can't remember where I was, but I saw a poster that said, "The world according to a New Yorker." The world according to a New Yorker. So New York is like so big. It's like the largest thing, and everything else is so minuscule. Like it's hard, it's like inconsequential. So for some persons, Prithiviti Achayata Nagaradigram really meant preaching throughout India. Because how could anyone else outside of Indian-born descent, like Malechas, like sitting in front of me here, like Madhurya Kadambini, how could they ever learn about Lord Chaitanya? How could they ever take up Krishna consciousness? No way. It's never going to happen. Even though the Lord has willed it. So starting with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he grasped what it really was, what the mission was, what the desire of the Lord was. And he took it upon himself. He was the first person that sent out the message of Lord Chaitanya to the Western world. Way back in the late 1800s, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was prolific in his writings, and one book in particular he wrote, what was it called? Yes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts. He distributed it to libraries all over the world. And that, when was that? It was 1896 when he sent it out. And what also happened in 1896? Srila Prabhupada was born in 1896. So, I mean, some people may think it's a sentimental connection. Oh, must have been very divine arrangement. That was the year, and this was the year that. But really, for us, it really is significant. It really is significant. And he sent it throughout the world. When Srila Prabhupada was preaching in the West, some of his devotees found that copy of that book in a university in Canada called McGill University. Yes, so Srila Prabhupada there and then acknowledged that, yes, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a real pioneer of the mission of spreading the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, in many ways, in every way actually, Sri Chaitanya, this ISKCON movement is being conducted under the divine inspiration of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his son Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Srila Prabhupada has sacrificed so much to fulfill their desires, to create a mission that will reach everywhere. One of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's most cherished desires, which he didn't see in his lifetime, was that he longed for the day that when American Vaishnavas, Russian Vaishnavas, European Vaishnavas, I don't know whether he included Japanese, but he mentioned all, will all gather in Mayapur and together chant loudly, Jai Sachinandan, Jai Sachinandan. And we see that as early as 1971-72, by Prabhupada's sacrifices and efforts, that became a reality. That became a reality. I was listening to a class some weeks ago by Vaisheshika Prabhu, who was recounting one of the first times he went to Sridham Mayapur, and Prabhupada was coming back from a morning walk. He wasn't on the morning walk, but he was part of the group that was there to receive Prabhupada with kirtan. And they were all Sankirtan devotees, book distributors, receiving Prabhupada with wonderful kirtan. And as we know, all these morning walks are recorded. So they were busy chanting with ecstasy in kirtan, trying to welcome Prabhupada. And then later on, he heard the recording of that talk right at the end. One devotee had leaned over to Prabhupada on the walk and mentioned that these are the devotees, your Sankirtan devotees, that are here to welcome you with kirtan, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said yes. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur will come personally and take them back with him. So we find how indebted, how dependent Srila Prabhupada was, and how, of course, this movement is on the mercy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Prabhupada even said in relation to the Adbhuta Mandir, the temple of the Vedic planetarium, that if we build this, if his disciples build it, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur will come personally and take them by the hand and take them back to the spiritual world. So yeah, we are very dependent. We are very reliant on the mercy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Oh yes, this is the verse. This is what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said about everyone coming to Mayapur. Oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German and American people will take up banners, mridangas and kartals and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. When will that day come? Oh, for the day when the fair-skinned men from their side, chanting Jai Sachin Nandan Ki Jai, will extend their arms and embracing the devotees of our country, coming from our side, treat us with brotherly feelings. When will that day come? Yes. So I thought to read from a very wonderful book called The Seventh Goswami by Rupa Vilas Prabhu, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur became famous as the seventh Goswami, a take on the six Goswamis of Shri Vrindavan Dham, who Lord Chaitanya had instructed to preach the message. He taught them so many things and then to spread it to everyone else. And by the efforts of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in establishing, not just establishing, but even in a sense re-establishing the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, his efforts were so prolific, so amazing, so extensive, that he was declared as a seventh Goswami. Just like we have 12 Mahajans, right? Mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Who's speaking that verse? I can't remember who's speaking the verse, that these, together with me, these are the 12 Mahajans. And many, many years ago, we were so amazed to hear His Holiness Krishna Swami declare, and Srila Prabhupada is the 13th Mahajan. Mahajana Yena Gata Sapanta, whom we follow, in whose footsteps we follow. So yes, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the seventh Goswami, who is so unprecedented in his work. Because when he appeared around that time, we find that the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reached levels of degradation that one cannot even imagine. It was so degraded. Just the word Vaishnava was spat at, was ridiculed. If someone identified themselves as a Vaishnava, it was like, what? You are so low class? You are so fallen? It's also described sometimes the word Vaishnavi was like a synonym for a prostitute. It was so degraded. Why? Because for some time after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, many Sahaja groups, many upper sampradayas had sprouted from the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that were making an external show of being followers of Lord Chaitanya, very external, but not really imbibing, not in any way, not in any way imbibing the true spirit of what Mahaprabhu was presenting. The purity aspect they had lost. And therefore they were doing all sorts of weird things in the name of the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the name of being his followers. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur worked very hard to re-establish this proper teachings, the proper presentation of the teachings of Mahaprabhu. So much so that he had many, many clashes with false followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One in particular comes to mind was when he rediscovered the holy birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just before he had done that, some Goswamis or some great sort of some people who were like very well known to be the followers of Lord Chaitanya had either mistakenly or in a cheating way rather for profit had established that Lord Chaitanya's birthplace was on the other side of the Ganga, on the other side by Navadvip. But through the geographical and historic research of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he realized no, it's Mayapur. And he found the exact spot, but he wanted it verified. So he called his great friend and mentor, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who was well into his well over 100 years old at that time, and he was so frail that he had to be carried around in a large basket by his servant. He was so old and so frail and weak that even to open his eyes he needed help. His servant would lift up his eyelids like that. But when he was brought to that place that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had perceived to have been the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj leapt out of his basket and was dancing like a young man. It said leaping 6 feet into the air. Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu still only 2 feet. He has to walk on 4 more feet, getting higher. But it was such ecstasy, such ecstasy. So because of that, when he established the birthplace, the actual birthplace, many people got aggrieved. Because on the other side, they were earning a lot of money by showing the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because people would come, donations would be offered, a whole economy was arranged because of that. So the holy place, he also pointed out, the holy place can never be used as that. Even when we establish temples, it's never to collect money. It's never ever to collect money, to use the holy place like that. So this was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very principled, very pure in his intent and presentation. Okay, so we will. Okay, let's just read from chapter 27 of this book, the Seventh Goswami. Summary of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life and qualities. This is mainly by Srila Prabhupada. The Thakur's biographers have summarized his life and accomplishments in various ways, each of them exhibiting keen appreciations of various aspects of the character and accomplishments of this Mahabhagavat, our beloved Acharya. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada gives a summary appreciation of the Thakur in a transcription of a lecture given on Gopurnima in 1969. Quote, "It was the desire of Bhaktivinoda Thakur to spread the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya in the Western countries. So with this in view of publishing the book Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his life and precepts, he sent copies to various university libraries, and one of the copies was found in the McGill University in Montreal. After 72 years, this book was found in the library by one of our students, and he brought it to me. From a materialistic point of view, I was born in a different family, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur belonged to a different family. And my spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, happened to be the 5th son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Although at home Bhaktivinoda Thakur was actually the spiritual master of my spiritual master, still he recommended Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur when he was a young man of about 18 years old, that you go to Gaurakishore Das Babaji and become initiated by him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a magistrate, and my Guru Maharaj belonged to a very respectable family. So he narrated the story before us, just about the family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I was listening the other day that before he took on the role of becoming like a magistrate or studied towards it, worked towards this, he worked in a shop, like a normal sales shop where he was selling things. And one man had overpaid him. And what did Bhaktivinoda Thakur do? He did the unthinkable offense of calling the man back and said, "Hey, you overpaid me, here's the excess money you gave." And when the shop owner had noticed that, he got very upset. Says, "You can't work here, please leave. You need to be a Brahmin, you should be a teacher, because you cannot tell an untruth." So that sort of set him off in a sense. This Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj used to respect Bhaktivinoda Thakur as his guide. Therefore we take it that in our disciplic succession, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur guided Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj initiated my spiritual master. Therefore Bhaktivinoda Thakur is accepted as the spiritual master of the spiritual master of my spiritual master. He is in the 4th generation, grand man, spiritual master. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur desired in 1896, and somehow or other, coincidentally, I do not know what his desire, what was his desire, I was also born in that year. And by Krishna's desire, I came to the disciplic succession to Saraswati Thakur, and he also asked me to go to the Western countries and preach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. The spiritual line of understanding is different from the materialistic point of view. The idea is that I was born in a different family and Guru Maharaj was born in a different family. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was at that time a magistrate, a government servant. By Lord Chaitanya's desire, we have come in the same line of disciplic succession. What was taught by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in 1896, that these teachings of Lord Chaitanya should be spread in the Western countries, by chance or coincidence, it is happening now. We should take it for granted that whatever is happening at the present moment by my humble endeavor, it is all by the grace of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Therefore, on this auspicious ceremony of Lord Chaitanya's Appearance Day, it will be greatly beneficial for us to hear from Bhaktivinoda Thakur what he wrote 72 years ago. And after 72 years, being a humble servant in that line, I am trying to distribute his teachings. There is a spiritual coincidence, and we should take advantage of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book. Practically, this Chaitanya movement was, of course, Lord Chaitanya inaugurated this movement 500 years ago. And after that, so many pseudo-Chaitanyites deprecated the whole thing. But the Chaitanya movement in its pure form, as it is, was restarted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We should take it that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the origin of Krishna consciousness movement in its pure form. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote almost 100 books. Just imagine, he was a very responsible officer, a magistrate. He was a grihasta. He also had many children. Altogether, he had 10 children, and he had to take care of children, the office of magistrate, and extra religious work. He was also made the superintendent of the Jagannath temple, because the government knew that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a very highly advanced religious person. Whenever there was some religious question, he was consulted on. Whenever there was some religious question, he was consulted. In spite of all his responsibilities as officer or as family man, with so many children, he executed his family life very nicely, or else he could not have produced a child such as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. At the same time, he served the Supreme Lord in so many ways. That is the beauty. He has written so many books, and in spite of cumbersome duties, that is the beauty of his life. He would come from the office in the evening and take his meals and go to bed. That was his program. And he'd sleep from 8 to 12 at night, 4 hours, and then get up and write his books until morning. That was his program. In this way, he wrote hundreds of books, some published, some in the course of being published. All this became possible because he was such a sincere, faithful servant. To write so many books with so many responsibilities for an ordinary magistrate is not possible. But because he was sincere, he got the strength from the Supreme Lord. One does not need to seek strength separate from the Supreme Lord. But if you are sincere, the Supreme Lord will give you sufficient strength. I mean, Srila Prabhupada is not intending it, not meaning it, but you can also get a sense of how Srila Prabhupada was so sincere. I mean, when you think about it, just objectively, stand back and look at what Srila Prabhupada did, traveling, managing, dealing with disciples, preaching, and at the same time to present books of the caliber, the intelligence and the genius of what he did. 70 volumes of books. And not over 40 or 50 years, but over the space of, well, he wrote a few before he came to the West, but basically in 15 years, it's quite unimaginable. It's through that sincerity came immense empowerment. And we see he got the inspiration from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought my Guru Maharaj to this world to be his son. He prayed to Lord Chaitanya that your preaching and teachings have been so much depreciated. It is not in my power to correct them. He prayed to Lord Chaitanya, and after his prayer, Lord Chaitanya sent my Guru Maharaj as his son. And he took up the matter very seriously. Yes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was praying to Lord Chaitanya that this work is so mammoth, I cannot do it. Please send me one of your very own. Send me a ray of Vishnu. So that ray of Vishnu descended as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So this is, to petition God, the Lord, for something, you got to be pretty empowered. Why must the Lord send his own confidant, his own confidential servant on your prayer? You got to be of the caliber of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Like Advaita Acharya, by his prayers, the Lord himself came down. The Lord himself came down. So then Rupa Vilas Prabhu continues. This delightful summary of the Thakur's life by Srila Prabhupada certifies a very important point for our understanding, that the pure cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had been lost for all practical purposes, and that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur re-established the whole thing almost single-handedly. He points out that it was the desire of Thakur Bhaktivinoda that the Krishna consciousness movement would spread all over the world. He thus credits this desire of the Thakur and Lord Chaitanya as resulting in the appearance of Srila Saraswati Thakur and Prabhupada's own subsequent linking with the line of disciplic succession. Thus, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is a result of the desire and grace of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as substantiated by Srila Prabhupada in the above statements. Srila Prabhupada also put special stress on how the Thakur was given empowerment or strength by the Lord to write transcendental literatures for the benefit of the world. He poignantly states, with respect to the Thakur's with respect to the Thakur's literary accomplishments, that he accomplished so much despite cumbersome duties, and that this was the beauty of his life. In a biography of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur written by Bhakti Kusum Shraman Maharaj, he identifies three major areas of the Thakur's achievements. First, his books and writings in various languages dealing with the science of Krishna consciousness as taught in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the revealed scriptures. Second, the discovery of the Lord's actual birthplace. And third, the innovations he introduced for the purpose of preaching the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the 6 Goswamis throughout the world. Beyond this, the Thakur established the deities of Lord Chaitanya and Srimati Vishnu Priya at Mayapur and in the Godrum Dweep, his place of bhajan, where he established the deities of Gaur Gadadhar. He also personally preached about the pure Krishna Bhakti, and his activities demonstrated his limitless enthusiasm and determination for broadcasting the Vaishnava Dharma. All these characteristics are indications of his being an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So even these three things, and with establishing deities and preaching, we find Srila Prabhupada is so much reflected. His efforts are also reflected in the same way. The books, of course, he didn't discover the Lord's birthplace, but he replicated the Lord's birthplace, the holy places all over the world, and also innovations in preaching. Innovations in preaching is also something that Srila Prabhupada was so famous for. The Thakur was dedicated to the principle of truth from his childhood. His firm sense of responsibility in carrying out his duties, his ideal example of household life, his eagerness to spend every moment possible in cultivating and studying the science of Krishna consciousness, his punishing of the so-called avatar Bishakishen despite severe opposition, his checking the murderous activities of the Kanjhar thieves in Vrindavan, his association with and affection for those who were dedicated to the worship of Krishna, and his visiting the various villages for spreading the message of Lord Gauranga, both before and after his government retirement. All these examples were meant for the edification and inspiration of all sincere, intelligent persons. Okay, now we'll read something that whenever I think about makes me feel very, very embarrassed and guilty. It may do the same for y'all. This is talking about optimum use of time in one's day. So this is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's daily schedule. So Lalit Prasad Thakur was one of the sons of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In his notes on his father's life, describes the Thakur's daily schedule while he was staying in Jagannath Puri. He was never idle, being always engaged in the service of the Lord. Between 7:30 and 8 p.m. in the evening, he would go to bed. He would then rise just before 10 p.m., so 2.5 hours. Light his oil lamps and write books until 4 a.m., so 6 hours writing. He would then rest again. Maya, sleeping during Brahma Murta. This is terrible. He would then rest again for a maximum of half hour. At 4:30 in the morning, he would wash his hands and face, sit down and chant on his beads. He never showed his beads to anyone, but he would constantly chant on them as time permits. At 7 a.m., he answered all correspondence. At 7:30 a.m., he read various religious and philosophical works. And at 8:30 a.m., he received visitors, if any, or else he continued to read until 9:30 a.m. So far he's had 3 hours of sleep, right? At that time, he would walk back and forth on the veranda of his house, contemplating different religious questions and solving them in his mind. Sometimes he would solve them aloud as if preaching to an unseen guest. He would rest briefly from 9:30 a.m. to 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes, then take bath and have breakfast, which usually consisted of a half quart of milk, 2 chapatis, and some fruit. At 9:55 a.m., the Thakur would don his uniform and leave for court in his carriage. As a magistrate, he wore a coat and pants. On his neck were 6 strands of large tulsi beads. That's a nice detail. He had 6 strands of large tulsi beads. He was resolute in his court decisions and would decide a case immediately, not tolerating any humbug. He did his business and left. He shaved his head monthly and never cared what anyone thought of it. I mean, this could be taken 2 ways. One way is that people would say, oh, why you got a shaven head? This looks so weird. And from other point of view, some people will say, well, why why you're not shaving enough? Yeah. It's like, what's wrong with you, So I'm not sure which one, but I imagine because in the situation he was in his occupation and profession, having a shaven head was just so outrageous at the time. The lawyers and Englishmen were astounded by the Thakur's capacity for work. At 10 a.m., court began. He would hear between 30 and 50 cases per day, and yet he finished by 1 p.m. So in 3 hours, he could hear almost 50 cases. What took other magistrates 1.5 hours, he finished in 5 minutes. He took another 2 minutes to write the judgment in detail. Some of his British superiors became envious and tried to discourage him, but he was not affected. At 1 p.m., he went home, refreshed himself, and then returned to work from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Every evening after his court duties, Bhaktivinoda Thakur would translate some Sanskrit religious work into Bengali by dictating it to a secretary. Then there was an evening bath and a meal consisting of a little rice, 2 chapatis, and another half quart of milk. So he had a quart of milk every day. What's a quart? Anybody knows? Can someone check? A quart of milk. Bhaktivinoda Thakur worked with a pocket watch so that everything he did was on schedule. Despite his heavy domestic and official responsibilities, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's every moment was embellished with an intense desire to render service to the Lord. Very similar to Srila Prabhupada, he was so meticulous in being scheduled. Sometimes in the mood of being spontaneous, we may not like this mood of being regular and scheduled, doing things at certain time. But we see in the lives of practically most of our prominent acharyas, especially Srila Prabhupada. I mean, even when I think of even some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples like Gopal Krishna Goswami, so structured, so regular. Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, almost like a stickler to keeping to that schedule, very, very strict. That a lot came out of that. A lot of potency came out of that. What's a quart? About a liter. Okay, not too much. Yeah. So let's read about Bhaktivinoda Thakur's character. In this book, A Glimpse into the Life of Thakur Bhaktivinoda, Pandit Satkari Chattopadhyaya Siddhanta Bhushan, who was commissioned by the Thakur Bhaktivinoda Memorial Committee to write a short biography of the Thakur in 1916, has written glowingly of the Vaishnav character of the Thakur. He explained that the Thakur Bhaktivinoda was so charitably disposed that no one ever went from his home disheartened, and he who once called on him was sure to meet him again with a smiling face. Srila Bhaktivinoda befriended men regardless of their rank, a phenomenon especially visible when he widely preached the holy name. He never bore any grudges, and those who were jealous of him or attempted to impede him in his spiritual mission were in the long run ashamed of their conduct and often came begging his pardon, which he never refused. His sense of universal brotherhood made him the friend of all, and he was always eager for the benefit of all. Whoever contacted him was immeasurably benefited. The Thakur was never proud, and his amiable position and his amiable disposition was a characteristic feature of his life. He never uttered a word that would injure another's feelings, and he never chastised anyone unless he was perfectly confident that he had the right to do so for that person's welfare. On the other hand, whoever received a warning from him always felt himself purified by that experience. He did not possess the least shadow of vanity, although he was honored and respected throughout Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. His profound knowledge of philosophy endeared him to the educated, and his devout bhakti made him the friend of both the gentle and the ruffians. As a government official, he was always taken into confidence by the British officials, and he was consequently well acquainted with the reasoning behind government decisions. He had witnessed the hard days of the Great Mutiny, and while he was in office, he assisted quelling many disturbances. His administrative ability was marked even by the ruling chief of the Tipura, His Highness Maharaj Birchandra Manikya Bahadur, and his son. The government of Bengal also, on more than one occasion, wanted to vest him with honors and titles, but he humbly declined the same each time on the ground that such honors would, instead of doing him good, would stand against his holy mission. Okay, it goes on to other sections. All right, since we're almost at 8:30, we can read about... we can read two things. His acceptance of Babuji Vesh. In our Gaudiya line, although it's not so well known or recognized, together with Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, there's another ashram called Babaji Ashram, that a number of Gaudiya Vaishnavas have accepted. Srila Prabhupada didn't really establish it, nor did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. I mean, there were one or two exceptions, but they didn't really promote this or establish it or encourage it, because their mission was to spread Krishna consciousness. And the Babaji mood is to just be in one place doing bhajan, basically. But we see after his lifetime of preaching and service, Bhaktivinoda Thakur did accept this. So here, one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's, Sundarananda Vidya Vinod, has described how Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave up his householder life and accepted initiation into the renounced order from Srila Gaurakishore Das Babaji. One day in 1908, the Thakur followed the Babaji as he went from the Thakur's house in Godrum Dweep to the boat ghat, where he would cross the Ganges and go to Navadvip. As he followed him, the Thakur repeatedly asked him to give him initiation into the renounced order of life as a Babaji. Gaurakishore Das Babaji felt that he was very fallen and unqualified, seeing Bhaktivinoda Thakur as his spiritual master, and thus with great humility he refused to become the Thakur's Vaishya Guru. Soon after this, the Babaji, by mystic intuition, could understand that the Thakur was very determined and was coming to Navadvip to ask him again. In order to avoid him, Gaurakishore Das Babaji went to the house of a prostitute near a marketplace in Navadvip and sat on her veranda for a while. He reasoned that if he had gone anywhere else, including the Ganges, he would have been discovered by the Thakur, but he would never be found in the house of a prostitute, for the Thakur would never enter such a place. Meanwhile, the Thakur, not finding Babaji Maharaj, could understand his uneasiness, and so he returned to Godrum. Babaji Maharaj then came out of hiding and went to the Radharaman gardens, where he began to laugh uproariously. When questioned by a devotee who was present as to why he was laughing so much, he replied, "Today I have outwitted Kedarnath Babu." Kedarnath, of course, is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. "I sat in that Mataji's house over there, and not being able to find me, Kedarnath Babu returned home." A few days later, Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent one of his sons to Navadvip to bring Babaji Maharaj to Swananda Sukhada Kunj. Swananda Sukhada Kunj is the name of the residence of Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Sridham Mayapur. The Babaji agreed to come, and after a few days' stay, he consented eventually to initiate the Thakur as a Babaji. According to Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj's direction, the Thakur, in his presence, put on the old loincloth and bahirvash, begging apron, of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, his own Shiksha Guru, who had departed from the world some years earlier. By his verbal consent and his physical presence as a witness, Srila Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj became the Vaishya Guru of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur followed the example of Srila Sanatana Goswami, who took the renounced order of life in the presence and with the consent of Lord Chaitanya by putting on the old white cloth of Tapan Mishra. In this way, everything was done wonderfully, following the historical Gaudiya Vaishnava precedent. After this, the Thakur continued his writing and chanting, sometimes living in Godrum Dweep and sometimes in Calcutta in the Bhakti Bhavan. Okay, now we will read about his last days and disappearance. After taking to the renounced order of life, the Thakur accepted some disciples, and one of them, Krishnadas Babaji, continued to serve him as he had in Jagannath Puri. Feeling a strong desire to be fully absorbed on the spiritual plane, the Thakur shut himself up in Bhakti Bhavan in the year 1910, so that he could remain uninterruptedly engaged in the divine service of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. Feigning paralysis before the eyes of common people, he entered into a state of total samadhi, spiritual trance. On June 23, 1914, the sun began its southern course. It was the same day that Gadadhar Pandit, the incarnation of Srimati Radharani, had left the world some 450 years before. Precisely at noon, the Thakur entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord. That's basically around now, if you think about it. Our 8:30 is noon in India. Precisely at noon, the Thakur entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord, far beyond the vision of the conditioned souls of this world. The Thakur's Samadhi ceremony was delayed until the sun began its northern course. At that time, his last remains, his ashes, were taken from the Bhakti Bhavan and brought to his home in Godrumadweep. There they were placed in a silver urn and buried in the midst of huge kirtan and festival held in his honor by his disciples and friends. Hundreds took part, and his direct presence was experienced by everyone. Truly, the Thakur's great stanza, composed in the glorification of Srila Haridas Thakur, applies to him as well. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die, when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. Jai Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki. Does anyone have any comments? Questions? Yes, Rukmini.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. You were mentioning that through sincerity comes empowerment. I was wondering, how would you define sincerity?
Oh, that question. You know, sometimes we may look at sincerity, from different soft perspectives. But Srila Prabhupada, I can't remember the exact words, but he said sincerity means to follow all the rules and regulations very strictly. I can't remember the exact words. You'll remember something like that, right? No matter how big or small. So, I feel very challenged by that statement often, but we can't escape it. That's what it means. If one is sincere, then one will have a couple of considerations. They'll recognize their shortcomings, they'll recognize their weaknesses, but they will never deny the standards. They will never sort of argue that this standard, why must it? They'll accept, yes, I cannot make this. I cannot reach to this level, but they know it's there for a reason. Sometimes I find myself, I see others, but I'll talk about myself especially. We will try and intellectually and intelligently try to prove how something's not applicable anymore. Right? We do that, But Prabhu, this is not practical. We should put it one side. No, rather we should say, you know what? I'm not strong enough. I'm not advanced enough. I'm not strict enough to manage this. But let me honor that standard. Let me honor that rule. Let me honor that regulation by accepting it, that it's there and it's something I must reach to. But not internally just dismiss it. So Srila Prabhupada was very clear. Sincerity means to follow all the rules and regulations, no matter how big or small. And following it means, at least starts with accepting it, that it's there, that I need to reach towards it. We may not be there now. That's another aspect of sin. That we may not be there now does not mean we're not sincere. But if we are sincerely desiring to get there, then that's sincere. Because Srila Prabhupada had a lot of sincere disciples. A lot of them. But many of them weren't able to follow the top level. But still Prabhupada was very kind to them, very accepting, accommodating, because they did not deny it. Like the other day I shared a very amazing quote that was spoken by His Holiness Ritadwaj Swami. It gave me so much of hope. He was speaking at a Vyasa Puja of Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami. This was well after Tamal Krishna Maharaj's passing away. And he quoted something that Tamal Krishna Maharaj had said. He says, I don't mind, this is about his disciples, he's speaking about his disciples, Tamal Krishna Maharaj is saying, I don't mind where they are at or what they have done. If they are loyal to me, I'll be loyal to them to the end. That's amazing, huh? And this, if you know Tamal Krishna Maharaj in any way, this was just clearly, so beautifully defined his relationship with his followers. So Srila Prabhupada was like that. We simply have to be loyal to what Srila Prabhupada wanted us. Be sincere. Try our best to follow everything. And of course, so that's one aspect. There are other aspects that I could think about what sincerity means. Is that it must have a component of deep honesty. That what we do, what we say, and what's in our heart must correlate. It must correlate. We should never pretend, we should never put ourselves forward as being something that we're not. Of course, sometimes by the request of the spiritual master, the request of one's spiritual mentors, they may ask us to reach for something a little higher than where we are at the moment. But if they are doing that, then that means they are filling that gap by their mercy. Like we are taught, right? I'm not sure where it's written anywhere, but I know we are taught that when we are given an instruction, along with the instruction comes the mercy and the potency by which to follow it. So a sincere devotee will recognize that I'm not qualified, but I have confidence in the faith, confidence in the mercy of my spiritual master or whoever is giving me the instruction. So as a devotee will be honest, will be humble, and will be very determined to follow all the rules and regulations, no matter how big or small. Even if they're not able to, they'll recognize it and try their very best. So yeah, sincerity, I guess, means those things. It means showing up. It means showing up, day in and day out. It means showing up. That's sincerity. Yeah, because just to see Krishna, right? I mean, I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago. I was feeling very lethargic to come for greetings of the deities. It's just lethargic. Oh my, it's there every day. I can go tomorrow. What's the big deal? And I was reading about, just before that, I was reading about how every day it's a festival for the residents of Vrindavan to gather together and see Krishna when he's going out in the morning to herd the cows. It's such beautiful descriptions of it. It's such, everybody gathers, right? Because they know they may not see Krishna again during the day. So it's a big thing for them. And when he's coming back, the description, that Purva Raga of seeing the dust raised by the hooves of the cows, and they know Krishna. So everybody gathers again to wait and see. And they get rewarded by this amazing darshan of Krishna's form being smeared with all the dust. They say it's one of the most beautiful darshans you can get, Krishna covered with the dust raised by the hoof prints of cows. So sincerity means just to show up for the pleasure of Krishna. And when we do things for the pleasure of Krishna, then we are purified and we also become pleased and happy. So yeah, let's show up. Show up every day. No matter how big or small the event is. Show up. Alright, Hare Krishna. So today we will gather again. Oh gosh, what time is it? 12. Let's see. It is ISKCON Durban News. Yes. 12 p.m. Bhoga offerings. You are welcome to bring food and flower offerings. And then at 12:30 will be the Raj Bhoga Arti and Kirtan for Radha Radhanath. And after that at 1 we will have worship of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur with Pushpanjali Guru Puja, and then after Prasadam. We may have a class. Yeah. we may have a class at that time for because it's one thing just to offer flower petals and guru puja, and it's important for whoever comes. So maybe we'll adjust it at one straight after. Okay, maybe before Pushpanjali or after Pushpanjali we'll have a little reading or discussion. Will you be here? Could you present something, 15, 20 minutes, and then we can have prasadam. All right, we'll see you all later at 12 o'clock for the festival. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Go Premanande.